did your career as a journalist teach you about the opening of a story? Like the first sentence or two?
That there has to be a human being that readers are going to care about and relate to. So, stories that start off with a long-winded description of place may be beautiful writing, but they don't connect to people immediately. So, you have to actually think almost like a newspaper story. If it's a feature, almost like, beginning, middle, and an end. What's the arc of this person? But you always have to figure out where is the place to jump in. Where, I like to go in action. I always like to, something happening, not somebody reflecting or somebody, telling a story from a long time ago. But yeah, you have to, what's the essence of the story? That is one of the challenges of being a reporter is, making your mind work, saying what is happening here? Because there's a million things happening in the world. You could go to some Chamber of Commerce speech and just report, be a stenographer, basically an artful stenographer, or you could go, what's really, why do they bring us here? What's behind the press release, right? And so that's the mystery of it. Believe me, I spent a lot of time running around, pulling into 7-Eleven for a super healthy hot dog and Diet Coke and Fritos, trying to figure out what is my story here, and I didn't master it by any means. But, that's, you have to ask yourself, what's the human thing happening? It might seem very distant from some council committee reporting on, I don't know, affordable housing requirements for a developer. Well, they cut back a development from 7 to 6. Who's that family that gets the shaft, right? Stuff like that.
How much do the lessons of how to hook the audience apply to your writing as a novelist?
Very much so. Very much so. You have to be watching a lot of your children in a novel, that you've created. But you can never lose, my editors taught me this, you can't lose the thrust of the main character or characters. You have to really you have to write a drama, with words that people, are going to want to see, who is this character? How are they going to turn out? They don't know themselves what they're doing. Remember that, a lot of, some people will write, where the character will have perfect understanding of the situation. That's never the case. You have a perfect understanding. So, you have to make them sympathetic. You have to make them flawed as hell, and, people, sometimes it's easy to give a character, make them, they don't make a mistake or they don't misjudge a situation. And you can't do that because somebody's reading is going to go, I've never been like that. Cliffhangers are so important. Suspense is important. I also think really important is having a twist at the end. And were there people really paying attention? I had a twist at the end of my book about my family. And there's twists in every single one of them, but you have to plant them artfully. I've learned. And characters, characters must always be in conflict. Sometimes with themselves, other times with other people or a place. The stakes have to be clear. I mean, you're not saying, gosh, if he doesn't date this girl, he's going to, his life is just going to be a train wreck. But you have to make it very, you have to let people know this is why you're reading this section. It's not just, staging people around with pretty words and some good atmosphere. It has to have a point. Always has to have a point. And build, and explode. The slow burn, I'm learning, is a key. But then when that flash happens, it has to be worth the payoff. And so there's just a lot to keep track of. And that's one of the great things about doing fiction. When you write nonfiction, the universe is defined. Yes, you can write it artfully, you can create suspense, you could leave things for people to discover later, but with a novel, it is more like being a diver, going from 20 feet out into a 100-foot drop. That's a darn big ocean, and it'd be overwhelming. And the trick is just, creating a manageable ocean of animals of your own creation, and you know what they're doing, and you always make it interesting and have surprises. You have to kill off characters. You have to, you think they're so noble. Well, actually, that was a very douchebag thing you did there, but then it's still a humanity people want to pull for.
What are the worst ways you can start a story?
By taking something terrible or unsettling that happened to you in your personal life and making it a false narrative. The worst way, that would be a pretty crummy way to do it. Or being so digressive because you're interested in that subject and you're going to force a reader to be interested in that you move away from, the locomotion of where your story is getting. So I would say that, there was a reason, J.R.R. Tolkien and Dickens and the others, they wrote books that were that thick because there was nothing else to do. People can't handle that. People want shorter and shorter books, which I think is a bit of a shame. But, a terrible beginning to a story or terrible passage is one that betrays your narrative, your plot, all that. You're just maybe you're trying to show off or too cute for yourself. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes in this book. I had so much energy. I had so many ideas that I was trying to pack too much into the molecule. And some people noticed that. And if I did it again, it would probably be 20, 25 pages shorter. But I would not take it out any weirdness. I would not take it out any imagination. But it is important you learn. And I would like every book of mine to be progressively shorter.
Was that because you felt so close to the story in the sense that you grew up seeing this bridge for most of your life?
I don't think so. I just had I have two lives. I'm trying to paint the story of a city, passing era, characters, a bridge that is a metaphor for a way of life. So transitions between people's lives and relationships, I probably dragged them out a little bit too much, but other people say, I've had conversations, people go, absolutely, I'm glad you didn't change that. That would have ruined it. So almost the worst thing you can do is, the best thing you can do is learn. The worst thing is go second guess and berate yourself. Why did I need that extra chapter? Whatever, because I could go back to the very beginning of the first stories I ever wrote, and going back to college and go, oh, how could I have done that? Every writer has that moment. Actually, it'd be pretty funny to take a Pulitzer winner and make them read the first story they ever wrote because they would be under the table embarrassed, But how do you get good unless you practice and get edited and get roughed up by life? So, that I'm kind of learning that. But it's you can't overcomplicate the story, and you also can't short arm it. So it's a balance.